nonstop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Yeah, we were, we're 10th in rush per game, 8th in pass yards per game, 1st in interception percentage, 4th in sacks per play, 11th in first downs per game, 7 in yards per game. So we just got to do better in red zone.
And with that, we begin this week's episode of Purple Access. Zolgad, Star Tribune sports columnist Chip Scoggins, executive producer Declan Goff, and that was the voice of Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer. And Chip, I have a long-held theory that basically originated with our covering of the downfall of Brad Childress. And I saw it yesterday. A coach coming out and having told a PR person to give him a bunch of positive stats that he can read and at his press conference and then give a wink to I don't know whom is usually the beginning of the end. That is never a good sign. I think situations like this play out through a process, like it's just a very typical process. That was a part yesterday, I think, of being past the point of a return of the hope of this thing either A, being turned around, or probably more importantly to Zim, him keeping his job.
Yeah, it feels, I don't know, desperation or defensive or however you want to categorize it. But yeah, when a coach brings prepared stats, knowing that he's going to get asked certain questions, tells you that he's feeling the pressure of the job, right? And ultimately, stats can be misleading, and coaches are the first ones to tell you that. So at the end of the day, at the moment of truth to go win a game, the defense failed, and the head coach called 2 timeouts. And so, and now you don't have your best player on defense. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't judge the other night. I woke up and I was like, it wouldn't shock me if there was a coaching change. I didn't expect it.
Right.
But it felt like one of those watershed losses, like Childress's Green Bay to me.
Yep.
I don't know if it was to the point where it was that bad where you felt like Childress had lost the locker room and you couldn't go forward. I didn't get that sense. But it's when you're an owner and you're at home in a big game, prime time, only game being played, and the fans are booing the living heck out of your team, and you play that poorly against that quarterback who had basically never played in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Again, that felt like a watershed loss to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this feels so. I'm with you, and I actually think that this team being this team, and again, these situations play out fairly typically. I fully expect that there will be a defiant bounce back here. Like, I think we all think they're going to go into Baltimore and get shellacked. My experience has been that's not necessarily the case, but they do have the Packers around the corner. They play Baltimore, they play at the Chargers in Los Angeles, and then they play the Packers here. And it's that type of game where if the Packers come here, and they might not now because they starting with yesterday clearly have some situations with Rodgers, but if they come in here and beat you badly, that's the type of thing where I think the Wolves will probably be at their breaking point.
Yeah. And it didn't feel like, to compare it to the Childress thing, like that, you felt like the players could not go forward with him. I don't get that sense here. I mean, we're not in the locker room, so we don't get the sense like we normally would, right? Mm-hmm. When you're around guys all the time. Mm-hmm. But to your point about the bounce back, one, it's the NFL. It happens all the time, right? As my colleague Mark Craig says, when everybody's going this way, it's going to go the other way, right? That's just how it works. And it's just kind of this team's makeup where as soon as you think they're just awful and they surprise you with the performance. But the way that offense is going now, and I don't think we can underestimate this Danielle Hunter loss because their line just does not have a pass rush now, Jed. And I think it sounds like they'll get Pierce back right this week, and that'll obviously I think help the run defense. But in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback, We saw it in the second half the other night, Judd. There was that Cooper Rush was allowed to get comfortable, and if they can't get pressure on the quarterback, how is that secondary going to hold up? I don't see how this is going to work
without Pat P too. So it's Breland and
for the
Dan
next 2 more games. Yeah.
And Breland, and I mean, come on, Breland has been a disaster back there. He literally tipped the ball to Amari Cooper on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like that pass. In fact, the best thing that I've heard so far in the past 3 days, Andre Patterson was the first guy, the co-DC and defensive line coach during his press conference, Chip, on Wednesday, got up there and said that ball should have been picked. And if that ball's picked, everything else doesn't happen. I mean, that's the type of play that this defense has to make. Like it's not good enough not to make that play. And when they don't make that play, it's the disintegration and Chip, I mean, look at the last 3 games, right? Detroit, Carolina. Now you won both those games, and Dallas, you have absolutely defensively come unglued at the worst time. And your head coach is known as a defensive head coach.
And a lot of that is because these teams are in desperation mode where they're throwing it. And I know the Cowboys have really, really exceptional wide receivers and they're fast and good and all that, but I mean, just the cushion that those corners were giving him.
Yep.
Because I think they're not good enough to be up on him, and so they're laying out. And even quarterbacks as inexperienced as Cooper Rush, is gonna make those completions if you're not getting pressure on him. And so, when you look at the next 3 weeks, Joe, with the quarterbacks they're going to face, and it's a tall order for this defense, and it goes back to what we've talked about for the last however many weeks. If the defense is going to give up those points, the offense has to be able to be aggressive and throw the ball down the field. I could not, for the life of me, understand what the offense was doing Sunday night. I couldn't understand it.
The scripted play was great. The scripted plays to start the game were great. I have no idea what you're talking about the rest of the football game. Oh, screw that. Scripted plays were great.
Can you script the entire game, Judd? How much is that? How much are we finding, though, Judd, that this is a young coordinator learning how to do the thing on the job, learning to call play? Because you can script all you want, and it's great. It's been beautiful. It's been effective. But then when you have to shift into, reactionary, what's the defense doing? Game situation, what I call here, it's not working. And to think there wouldn't be these growing pains for a young coordinator doing this for the first time, I think is probably naive, especially with a head coach that wants things done a certain way.
And we talked about this from day one of Klint being promoted to that job, a guy who has never in his life been an OC before. I think his most responsibility in a coaching job was quarterbacks coach to Kirk for the last 2 years before 2021. And we've talked about this, for Mike Zimmer, who's incredibly demanding, and Kirk Cousins, who is probably, to use the best term, needy, for Mike to give Klint this job was questionable. And now you're seeing exactly why. You need a veteran coordinator who can take control. And Klint can't. And it's not even Klint's fault. He's a kid. I'm sorry. He's a kid. So, but yeah, that offensive performance on Sunday was bizarre.
And Kirk reverted back to being panicky and just trying to get rid of the ball.
Yeah, because of pressure.
And the pressure was bad. I don't know. I hadn't seen the stats. I assume that was one of the highest pressure rates games he's had.
It was. I think about
this year. Yeah, or maybe since his time here. I don't know. But so he was just getting the ball in his hands. But I still think there were opportunities down the field that he just was not willing to take. And I think it's because the pressure got to him, and he felt like every time he dropped back, he's going to have somebody on him. So I got to get rid of the ball. And whether that was the case or not, sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. And they just felt like they were completely discombobulated on what they were even trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or how to go about it. Yeah.
Right. Right. Because it starts with when the offensive line does not play well. And look, there's going to be times it does not. Kirk gets thrown off, and then he checks down. In fact, Zim took the obligatory sort of passive aggressive Kirk shot on, I think it was the Monday press conference, when he said, because somebody was asking about the lack of consistent deep shots, or basically after the scripted plays, deep shots at all. And Mike said the first play of the game was supposed to be a deep shot, and they covered it, and we checked it down. I mean, but that's what Kirk is going to do. And
Yeah.
Courtney Cronin of ESPN had a great stat that Phil read on the show today, which is mind-boggling. Get this. Last season, I believe the Vikings with Gary Kubiak as the OC and Kirk as the quarterback were something like 8th in play action passes. Okay. 8th.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Chip, they're 29th. Like,
why? What's for the drop?
That's a great question. There's no explanation for it.
Especially when you have that running game. Like that's the whole purpose, right? Use Dalvin to set with the play action to set up.
I have no idea. And what's really bizarre is it's one thing that we know Kirk does really well. Like Kirk's not, as I told Phil and Dex, Kirk's not at the point in Kirk's life where Kirk is going to change. Like, let's abandon play action because we got something else for Kirk. You know what Kirk can do well. Why on earth would you scheme away from something that, that Gary, your dad, found absolutely positively works for Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, as I'm sitting here trying to,
I can't rationalize it.
Process it in my brain on the fly. I can't even think of a rationale for doing that. For that's a big drop. That's not like going from 8th to 14.
Correct. But think about
I'm flabbergasted by that. Yeah.
Like, as we watch these games and say at times, wow, that seems odd. The statistical evidence is overwhelming that they are going away from one thing that Kirk does well. And we all know that appealing to Kirk's skills is a very smart thing.
Yeah, I would love to. Kubiak talks today, right? I assume that'll come up in his press conference.
My God, he's going to put you.
He's not going to give you an answer. Yeah,
he's going to tell you. Yeah, no. Everybody now. The other telltale sign of it just about being done is when everybody reverts to we got to go watch the film.
Yeah,
that was the end of
the old standby. Yeah,
that was the telltale of the end of less. We got to watch the film. Actually, and then by today it's we're moving on.
We're moving on. Yeah.
Hey, so you got a chance to watch that film against the Cowboys? Can you break it down? No, you know what? Not really, because now we moved on to Baltimore.
Monday, Wednesdays for watching film. Thursday, we're moving on. So you never have to address it.
Yep. So there's never a time where you actually tell us what you bleeped up.
I know. Yeah, I just, that one was so bizarre, considering that I believe Dallas was 28th in pass defense coming into the game. 15th in scoring defense. This was not one of the top 5 defenses they were facing in the NFL. And that secondary, yes, Diggs had a lot of interceptions, but that was an area where you felt like you could attack them and should just not be able to do it either because scheme, play call, Kirk, offensive line. And we saw once again, when that pressure comes up the middle from the center to guard, it just, Kirk, just there's no rebuttal to that other than let's just check it down, and the center had a tough time again. I don't know how much more evidence they need there,
How is there not a backup plan there? Like
well, he's a first round pick, right? I mean, they're trying to make this thing work.
You're right, but
you're right, Judd. You're right.
At some point in time here, this is actively right now costing people their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like your pride about Bradbury should work. He's 3 years in now, 4 years in.
This is year 4, correct?
Okay, but he is who he is. 3. Thanks, Dex.
3.
He is who he is. It's not changing. He's not big enough. He's not good enough. And he is being ragdoll. I mean, we've talked about this since his first year. And at that time, I think we all said he might improve. but he just gets ragdolled. He's tossed aside, and your quarterback who can't handle that, and a lot of guys can't, in fairness. That's tough pressure.
Yeah.
But you have essentially set this system up to fail, and you're not doing a thing. And your answer in the summer was to go trade for Mason Cole from the Cardinals, who is a better guard than center. So you really don't have a sufficient backup center. It's just so many things about this don't make sense to me.
Yeah, and it seemed like Oliudu had a tough time. How many penalties did he have? And just seemed like he had a tough night too. So,
yes.
You wonder how long before these receivers, we've kind of had them talk about we can only run the plays that have been called and blah, 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 if it becomes more vocal.
I think it did for one of them. I mean, Thielen was, for him, post-game outspoken.
Yeah.
And Blake, his agent, basically threatened. He didn't do it, but he threatened to go off. And I mean, a lot of what Blake knows
comes from
what Barrett knows has to come from his guy.
And he has a lot of guys. Blake has a lot of guys on that team.
Yeah.
As he's a rep. So,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where you start with the offense. I don't. I mean, we keep talking about this every week. They have to change. And it's just not, they're just not going to do it. And so,
correct.
I mean, you feel like it's the same thing over and over and over. And it's some games it works, if you face a bad team and you can get away with being conservative and run the ball and squeak by against Detroit or Carolina, who are terrible.
Right.
And when you're that conservative and you leave the door open, even a team that has a quarterback that has never played is going to come back because they have good players around Cooper Rush. It's like the end of that first half, Judd. I mean, it's such a bad optics to look that chaotic and not sure what you're doing. And I would love to know, does Kirk really have autonomy to call timeouts there? Yeah. He should. He's 30. He's 30, whatever you
quarterbacks. Look, Chip, we have covered the sport and team for a long time. We know exactly what guys can and can't do, right? Quarterbacks.
Yes.
Okay. Short of Brady and Manning and Favre, you are not allowed ordinarily to full on audible out of a play. Like, you'll get in big trouble. You have checks so you can check to plays, but going back to the Childress, his time here, we talked to Bevel about this. We talked to Brad about this. It is unusual, unless you are a Hall of Famer, for a quarterback to get to the line of scrimmage, say, I don't like any of the checks I can go to. I am changing everything. That gets you in trouble. But you do have checks to go to, and you can use timeouts. So that is the most ridiculous thing across the board. And it traces back to one thing. It traces back to the fact that Mike doesn't trust Kirk. Kirk does not trust Mike. And the relationship between, two of the most important people in the entire franchise doesn't work. It's just, it's fractured beyond repair, and they can meet all they want, and it doesn't matter.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, you tell us that you're meeting every Thursday to go over. Well, did you not go over this scenario? 2-minute drill, time's running down.
Just stop the clock.
I know.
You're not doing anything like, oh my God, he changed everything. You're stopping the clock.
Well, okay. If your quarterback's not doing it, even if he has the opportunity, then why is the coaching staff doing it? When it's just guys are running around, they not sure what they're doing, and you're just letting time. I just can't.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling, Joe. Mind-boggling.
Enough bad news for now. Before we transition, I want to talk about something that makes Chip and I very happy. And no, it has nothing to do with the Vikings. It is Surly Furious IPA. It is the beer of champions. It is the beer of the weekend. It is the beer of football. In fact, it's Thursday, so we're kicking off, pun intended, the football weekend. And if Surly Furious is not in your fridge right now, what are you doing? Chip Scoggins, I bet you have run to your store to get some.
I'm stocked up, Judd. You never have to worry about me being stocked up.
I won't worry again. Surly Furious. Don't settle. Get Surly. So what's your feeling here, Chip? Like, I mean, I have expected him to go to Baltimore and play and put up points because Kirk's so defiant. Mike is so defiant. But I do think that this is beyond repair now. I don't think anything saves Mike's job. And I guess my question, and it's not been broached a lot yet, is what's Rick's job status? I'm not convinced he's gone, but I also am not completely convinced that he's safe.
No, I don't. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, Judd. This sort of to me feels like the last year of Gardenhire, where you have a coach who's coach manager, had some success, you've had a good run, but it's just kind of becomes stale, and you sort of wonder like, where's this going, right? And so what we don't know is, do the Wilfs view this as a team or as individuals in terms of Zimmer, Spielman?
Right.
Is it I say team, a package? Like, if you're going to make a change, do you sort of make a change, or do you really make a change fundamentally, philosophically, and just go an entirely new direction? I don't know that. I mean, I haven't spent time around the Wilfs, so I we don't see him because we don't. I guess some people saw him Ziggy coming out of the locker room the other night, and he looked pretty dejected. But I don't know. I will say this: we're dumping on Zimmer a lot, and he's catching a lot of heat. We have to look at the personnel too.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to look at personnel mistakes and how they've gotten in this situation. So I don't think you can just divorce Spielman from this situation and say, well, the personnel is great, it's just bad coaching that they're 3-4. No, I don't think that's the right answer either. So, but it'll be interesting to see. And I don't think, unless something really happens, I don't think there'll be a change mid-season. I just don't know that you would get the desired effect out of that. I think this team will be kind of a roller coaster all the way through to where they'll win a couple games and you're like, okay, they're not bad, and then
correct.
And then they'll have moments where they look like the other night. So, but I don't think there'll be a change in mid-season. And they're weird enough that you're right. I wouldn't pick them to go win this weekend, but it wouldn't surprise me if they went there and played well either.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and Kirk plays well and they score some points this time. Because that's how this franchise and this team goes. They're up, they're down, they're up, they're down. I think to go back to Rick, I think the important thing to discuss there from the Wilfs standpoint too is not like, is Rick culpable for the disappointment so far of being 3-4? Clearly he is. But I think the most important thing is this. Mike's gone. You're going to have to get a new coach, and that coach is probably going to decide on the quarterback. It might be Kirk. It might not be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important question I have going forward when it comes to Spielman's employment is, A, do I want him and trust him to pick the next coach? And B, how much do I want possibly a different GM coach tandem in place to pick the QB? Because I will say some of it's bad luck and some of it's bad decisions. Rick has never hit on the quarterback. And that at some point in time, you can't be like, well, I mean, it's a position, it's hard. I understand it's hard, but some teams do and some teams don't. So I really think the discussion of Rick's employment is not what he's done right or wrong in the past. It's, do you trust him to pick people going forward who are the right people and essentially reboot or update this franchise, because it needs an update.
Yeah, and it's because you're talking about the two most important decisions a GM has to make. Who's your coach? Who's your quarterback? Right? Everything else, you're going to have hits and misses on him, but those are the two most important hires, so to speak, that you make. I think the Wilfs would have to sit down and ask themselves is, we've been on this path for a long time, relatively speaking, in the NFL, to have this kind of continuity and stability. If they're sitting there and say, do we just want something different, something fresh, a fresh set of eyes, a fresh perspective, someone who can hire the coach they want, figure out the quarterback situation. Obviously they like Spielman and trust him because he wouldn't be in that position this long without it, And so I don't know. I've thought all along that it's a package that Zimmer and Spielman are connected. Now we've heard enough of Zimmer comments starting in training camp where he's talked about the personnel where you felt like the path is going on separate paths there. But do the Wilfs view it that way? I don't know.
I'd be very tempted. So they like Rick. They trust Rick. I mean, hell, Rick not only survived 3-13, he got promoted to GM off of that. But with where this league is gone now, and your next guy, I think, has to be an offensive guy. It
will be. It will be. Yeah, for
and
sure.
It will be. Yeah, because you always do the opposite of what you did last. So, my question is, do I trust Rick to go and identify that person? And I'm sorry, but at this point in time, his resume here of quarterback choices, has not worked. And that has to be, and Teddy was bad luck, but Ponder was not. And Kirk Cousins, no matter what he's done statistically, was supposed to get you to the top of that mountain, and he has not come close. So I can't ignore that when it comes to Rick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, me personally, I think if you're going to start over, just start over, right? I mean, have a fresh everything and try to attack it that way. Again, we'll have to see what this Wilfs think on that. But yeah, it's some of the quarterback stuff is, he can help Teddy's injury and how that altered it. But I don't know that Teddy was going to be the quarterback to lead you to the championship.
Not.
I mean, we'll never know, obviously, but I don't know that he was going to do or fulfill what they thought,
Yep.
So, but it's going to be an interesting closing stretch here of games to see how they play, what kind of tension is there in the organization, what kind of because this is I got to imagine this was a stressful week in that building.
Yes. And I have to think that if Thielen, who's the ultimate team guy, is clearly not happy with things, that Jefferson has to be at least skewing towards that. And I mean, that's the type of guy that I don't, there's no reason to create Stephon Diggs 2.0, Chip.
Well, and here's the thing. We know how much of a competitor Justin Jefferson is, right?
Yeah.
So, Justin, you're going to be happy with 4 targets on a Sunday night primetime when CeeDee Lamb is going crazy and all these Cowboys receivers are going crazy and you're making big plays. And you're going to get targeted 4 times, less than C.J. Ham. Are you going to be happy with that? I mean, I just can't for the life of me understand how you target him 4 times.
Well, and with the script, you went to him early and it worked.
Yes.
And Trayvon Diggs, if I'm not mistaken here, took 2 penalties against him because Trayvon Diggs couldn't cover him.
Mm-hmm.
And you abandoned it because there was pressure. And then your quarterback checked it down. And then and I will say this, and we certainly could discuss this on a future episode as well. Halftime adjustments, that whole cliche is blown out of proportion. But the lack of in-game adjustments is not.
Yeah.
This team does not make in-game adjustments.
No, it is.
Dallas did. They talked about that. Dallas surprised the Vikings with adjustments they made. The Vikings, again, once the script expired, it was like, I don't really know what to do here. That's a problem.
Well, that's the thing. Look at the scoring after the script, and I wish I saw somebody do the numbers of score. Maybe it was Mackey. The scoring by quarters, and how it just drops off, and it's like that right there is the definition of in-game adjustments.
Correct.
Being able to identify how you can attack them, how they're defense, covering all those things, and to not be able to counter that, it's glaring. And so, Zimmer, I think that's why Zimmer talked about the script coming out of the halftime. It's like, it just. I think you're seeing a coordinator who's trying to figure this thing out on the fly, and it's just this is a bad year for Zimmer to be having that situation.
It's inexcusable.
Yeah.
It's unworkable. Like, to put yourself, to know that you were going into a make or break, you have to make a run season, and to be like, oh, the coordinator is just a young kid, we'll see how he does, is inexcusable.
Because, Judd, what did we hear all offseason? Offense was good, top 10, everything's good there. Let's just repeat that. We got to fix the defense. It's like we kept saying you had a lot of yards, but you weren't top 10 in scoring, so it wasn't like this was a great offense.
Right.
I think they overinflated how good that offense was last year.
And play action work, though, and now you're not doing it.
Yeah,
so like you're actually going backwards. You're doing things that don't make sense. So
that one blows my mind, Judd. I would love to hear the reason on that.
All right, Chip, great stuff. Purple Access. Don't forget, if you have not been to your local liquor store, you got to go today because it's a football weekend. Surly Brewing, of course, is our sponsor here at Purple Access, Purple Dailies. Surly Furious is the favorite of Chip Scoggins and yours truly. And also, if you're not watching football on a TCL TV, you're doing it wrong. Best place to watch football from the comfort of your couch, a Surly in your hand, and a TCL hanging from the wall. TCL, enjoy more. Chip, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, boys.